Hey, it's Mazzy. Welcome back. We're jumping right into the Beatles Red and Blue anniversary editions. Now, do you need yet another video about these? No, you don't. There's too many of them. There's live streams, and they go through every track by track by track. But I want to do my take, and I've thought about this and how to present this in several ways, and I really changed it up a little bit. Now, let me tell you about this. Of course, this is the slipcase version. There are color vinyl discs and black discs, and of course CDs as well. And this combines the 50th anniversary of the Red and Blue album, the first comps, the first official important comps of the Beatles in 1973, just 3 years after the Beatles split up. And of course, this was conceived by Alan Klein, who put together Hot Rocks for the Stones, and that was successful in 71. So whatever people think of Alan Klein, and there's a lot of shit to think about Alan Klein, he kind of was the brainchild. Of course, after these came out, he was fired from the Beatles, which was a good thing, they realized. But these were interesting comps because they weren't just the hit singles. Of course, you could debate and still on these updated versions quibble about a song here, a song there. And of course, what just came out are these editions. Now, these have been expanded to 3 LPs each. I'll get into that a little bit. Here's how I listen to them. I listen to all 3 records of each LP straight through in 2 different sittings, just alone, listening, paying attention. Sometimes my eyes were closed. You'll never know if that's true or not, but seriously, I really wanted just to listen for differences in these remixes, because remember, these are the Giles Martin remixes, and I wanted to listen to differences of memory. I didn't want to A-B back and forth, although later, after the second listening, where I took literally notes, I took notes of every single song on the Red album. I didn't do it on the Blue album, and I took these notes, and I actually videotaped a little bit of my reaction to that. Which is crazy. I was going to use that, but I don't think I need to use my reaction to every single Beatle song in the Red album, the remixes, because those are the new ones that most of us, or all of us, haven't heard. We've heard most of the Blue album because those came out on the anniversary editions. Now, the question is, do we really need remixes of Beatle records? This is like taking, being an archaeologist and taking, the digs of King Tut and changing the color of the wrappings or altering. Now, of course, in records, you could say, well, we have the originals, so it doesn't really matter doing a remix. Yes, we do. But one thing, I've been having these conversations with some friends about these. And let me start with the bad first. The ultimate thing is I actually like these for the most part. There are exceptions. And I will say up front, I have heard the CDs. I think the vinyl sounds better than the CDs. The dynamics are better. Having said that, if you're not a vinyl person, it doesn't really matter, does it? And it really depends. And again, I'm going to do a little caveat. And everyone who reviews these, there is always going to be that caveat. Who are you? When did you first hear the Beatles? I've been listening to them for almost 60 years now. I've heard every version. I collect every version. I grew up with the American albums. So you think about that. The American albums, Dave Dexter added this reverberization, this Dexterization. And until 67, when I actually first heard a UK version, I was gobsmacked. They weren't like I was used to for the previous 4 years, 3 or 4 years, whatever it was by that point. That was different. Think of when I first got the mono rubber Soul, and all of a sudden, I remember going to a friend's house who had the stereo version and hearing, what is it, I'm Looking Through You with that false start. Oh my God, that was so exciting hearing that. So we're used to different things. I'm sure people in the UK felt the same. I mean, they were horrified when they heard the American versions because, of course, the UK versions were the American bastardization of the UK versions, which are the way the Beatles, George Martin intended those records to be. We got Yesterday and Today, which previewed, 4 songs from what would be Revolver. We got a different Revolver, and the mixes were very different. So it was actually kind of exciting as a young Beatle fan to hear different mixes, hear different sounds, different backwards guitars, different mixes. And that's where we are today. Over the last few years, Giles Martin has been remixing the Beatles album, and it's very subjective. And possibly when you came in, what your taste is like, what your gear is like, what your room is like, how you are listening to these records, whether you're going to like them more or less. And overall, I actually like these remixes, again, with some exceptions. Now, I remember in 1998 or 99 when this album came out. This was the first real remix album, the song track for Yellow Submarine, where instead of having the soundtrack, which has the B-side of the George Martin orchestration, which I actually happen to love, these were the psychedelic songs that were included in the film Yellow Submarine, and these were remixed. When I got this, I was so excited of the potential remix. And what people complain about on the early years, a little bit here, but mostly where the Red albums are, is that all the vocals were panned left or right, and instruments were panned, and there was no center thing. Now, I'll get into that when I talk about the remix, but this excited me. And I will say up front, this is still my favorite of the remixes. The versions on the Giles Martin remix of these songs from here, I think this is the key. This is the best versions from my point of view, for my personal taste. But I think they did a pretty good job here overall. Now, I do want to start with the package. We all know the Beatles logo, you can't change that, you're not going to change that. The slipcase, it's sufficient. I would have preferred a whole different design motif here, but of course, the whole key is 50th anniversary of the red and blue. And as great as these were to begin with in 1973, and these are fabulous cover packages. I just like the yin yang of the new and old, the now and then, if you will, of these packages. The problem is, and let me just pull these out. These are the ones from 2014, all analog versions. I heavily suggest that somehow you get either the original UK, that's the first, original American, if you find a nice clean copy, or in 2014, they did these all analog versions. Make sure you get the right versions here. Research it, because sometimes you order them and they're going out of print soon. Well, they're out of print. They've just pressed what they press, but you could get an Amazon or someone else to send you the wrong one. And I really like these. I've heard some stories that people hear sibilance on them. I don't. I guess you got to realign your arms and recalibrate your stereo, your turntables there. I don't hear that. But it's nice to have these. Now, here's the problem, and I'm just going to pick one of these. For me, this is the remix. This is based on the original. And you see any difference? No, there's no friggin' difference. I can't believe that unless you look really close in the small print there and look at the 2023, I can't even get this in focus. My face is so in your face there. But this says 2023. Nowhere on the package, once you take the hype stickers off, do you see the year or do you see remixed? This is the remixed version. So a year, 2, 3, 4 years down the line when you see these in a store, and if it's used or you pull it off your shelf, you're not going to know which one is the hype sticker. Of course, it is a wonderful cover. Now, it is a 3 LP set, so in the second one, it's just one sleeve. And what I understand it, the CDs of these, the counterparts, are in chronological order. They formatted it correctly because they added a whole LP worth of newer songs, or of songs that weren't on the original versions. The vinyl, they'd cut the lacquers, and as a story that I've heard, is they decided to add this third disc of things. So they already cut the lacquers. They were in a rush. Give me a break. You're in a rush. Do it right. Start all over again. Cut new lacquers. But who am I to tell the Beatles and Apple and Universal what to do? So you have this last LP, this almost orphan LP, out of order. Of course, the last LP opens up with the added new track, Now and Then. Is that the place to put it? Of course, it wrecks the date. I don't really care about that. And I'll get into that song just a little bit when I go through the list here. But that's the only thing. The added records on each version, have this, out of sequence thing. Does it really matter? Probably not. But some way you want to designate the difference in a remix, like really offhand, right when you see it. Now, let me give you an example. You know this album, obviously, the last released Beatle album, and Let It Be Naked. Now, some people don't like this cover, but at least you're not going to confuse Let It Be Naked, a remix version of these songs, not all the Phil Spector crap, which I happen to kind of like actually, with this. You have a yin-yang negative thing. I think this is a brilliant way of presenting this, and somehow they should have changed it. Another great example, now I don't like the remix of this, but Pink Floyd's Animals. You take an outtake, you do sort of a screen back, you suck out most of the color out, 95% of the color is sucked out of here, and you present it. Right away, one's a remix, that something's different. That's what should have happened here. There's no way. And to this day, in 2023, you can't really walk into a store and buy a new copy of any Beatle record, the original mix of any Beatle record post, Rubber Soul? No, Revolver even. Revolver On. They haven't done Rubber Soul yet. And I think that is a shame that the original Beatle records are not available. So let's go through my take on this. And I'm going to start with the Red album, because that's the one I really concentrate on more, because I hadn't heard these remixes yet. And overall, I think it's very successful. But at the very beginning, and I had heard the single of Love Me Do, it's from a Needle Drop. I hated it. Bloated bass, there's something really off about it. Don't like it on the remixed album. Going into Please Please Me, it sounded dull, no bite. Again, just boomy and muffled. I didn't like it at all. But then all of a sudden we get into From Me to You. It's crisp, it's nice bass. I have all these notes here, so let me just kind of go through. I'm not going to go through every one, because unless I was doing some one-on-one with you, like a therapy session, I could go through every track and tell you my take on it. Again, this is totally subjective. Someone, a different age group, a different taste, different ears, are going to give you a different take on this. Excuse me, I'm tripping over my lips. There was so much Beatles here over the last 48 hours here. I want to hold your hand. These are some notes just that I wrote. I should have went to stenography school, because I could have done it a lot shorter with not all these pages that you see here. Seriously, wasted a lot of paper here. Okay, I want to hold your hand. Stereo as mono. Oh, I wrote stereo as mono. The guitars are very clear. The claps, it's a brilliant mix on it. It's sharp, it's tight. The vocals are wonderful. But here's where I question this. And again, this is just a subjective one man, nor man's opinion. And that is, why mix stereo like mono? If everybody wants that vocal center, and that's the complaints on all these early Beatle albums where the vocals are pan left or pan right and you have everything separate, that's friggin' stereo. And again, that is stereo in 1964 and 1965 and 1966. That's what stereo was about. Now, should they have mixed them different back then? Maybe. Maybe you would have centered vocals somewhat. But you do have the left and right somewhat. But these are basically, especially the early Red ones, they're very clear and they're very crisp and they sound really good. But they're essentially mono with a few little variations here. The beauty about remixes for someone like me who knows this music so well is occasionally hearing something that you, oh my God, I didn't hear that hand clap. I didn't hear that castanet. I didn't hear those bongos. Bongos are all over this thing. Not all over, but I'm exaggerating there. But you hear these things. All My Lovin', I wrote nice. Can't Buy Me Love. Snap drums, the acoustic guitar that you don't really hear as much, or I didn't notice it as much as I recall on the original, is really nice here. Okay. You know, one thing that I kept writing notes about every once in a while is the nice thing about these remixes is, to me, to me, especially in the Blue album, they work better on a comp because I always felt that most of the remixes that have come about, Abbey Road, Get Back, Let It Be, White Album, Sgt. Pepper, Revolver Now, as a full album, to me, to my ears, to the mood I have, to my taste, they're a little inconsistent. Some songs work really well and some don't. And I don't see the consistency of the album for my personal take on most of those remix anniversary sets that have come out. But on a comp like this, I think the remixes work a lot better because you don't expect them to flow in the same way. And I tell you, I hear a lot of people younger than me. When this album came out, when the Red and Blue albums came out, I was 19 years old. So I had heard these records, and of course I bought them because someone said, why do you need those records? We already have those songs, but I don't have them in this order. Of course, this is before we could comp up things. You could, of course, make a set best ofs, but now you can put them in every friggin' order, and playlists are king. And I think that's what the beauty of these sets are for a new generation. And if people are saying cash grab, cash grab, cash grab, I say shut the fuck up, cash grab. Look at all the people that are being employed at Universal, at Apple, you got photography scanning, you got copywriters, you got distributors, you got salespeople, you got mastering engineers, you got cutting engineers, you got pressing plants. A lot of people are being put to work. If you already have these, you can go buy some new music. I still buy new music, but I'm telling you why I think this is a good thing at this moment. Because the Beatles, obviously, with Now and Then, which you may or may not like, that's your taste on it. This is an essential collection of the Beatles. So if you don't have a lot of Beatles, and this was an entry point for a lot of people in 1973 before they got the individual albums. Now, I feel fine, of course. I still, in the back of my head, from being a kid and hearing those American records, miss the reverb on that. It's drenched in reverb on the American version. Of course, when I first heard the UK I Feel Fine, it was so dry and no reverb, and I thought it lost something. Now, I'm used to it now over the 50 years since I first heard the dry version. That's what you have here. The guitar's nice. The second guitar riff that comes in seems a little more pronounced, and that's something that stood out for me. Ticket to Ride, kick-ass drums, great vocals. That was a high point for me. That driving droney bass at times, very tight recording. I love Ticket to Ride. I loved Yesterday. I think the vocals seemed up, and the string quartet, it seems like they isolated the various stringed instruments, so they're not just in one section, and I just thought that was killer. Again, I don't see these as a replacement for someone like me. Now, most people won't know the difference because they don't know mixes. Younger people, newer people who casually listen to the Beatles aren't going to know these differences, and you don't even care, do you? You don't even care. Help, very punchy. Good guitar, kick-ass. I wrote kick-ass a lot here, and I wrote more bite. I mean, the drums and the bass really kick it in, and they're not bloated like the first two tracks on here, from my opinion. John's vocals, so beautiful, and you got to hide your love away. I really like, one of my favorite Beatles songs of all time, of course, is We Can Work It Out. I think it's that perfect blend of Lennon and McCartney, so love that. Day Tripper again, killer, great guitar riff. Does it go to one channel? Tight drums, I don't know what I wrote. I can't read my own handwriting there. Drive My Car, nice tight. I won't go through everything. Oh, and then after Paperback Writer, did I write Paperback Writer? Paperback Writer's always been a killer thing when the drums come on. Well, that's not, I don't have that Paperback Writer yet. We didn't hit that yet. But I wrote, look what I wrote here. I Miss Rain. Now, I've read a few, I haven't listened to any reviews yet from other people yet because I wanted to kind of do my own take. I didn't want to be influenced by anyone else. But I Miss Rain. And people quibble about, oh, why did they include this song instead of that song? And of course, we all have our own taste. But Rain is a pivotal record for the Beatles. It's got that great backwards guitar. Remember, Lennon wanted to release the whole thing backwards, supposedly, because he had threaded his tape at home backwards when he played it. And it's a great single. Rain and Paperback Writer is one of the great double singles, A-sides, I guess, of all time. And it's really that transition period for the Beatles when they're getting psychedelic and electric, more electric than ever. I just love that. And Ringo, how many times have you heard Ringo say, if you listen to Ringo say it, that's his favorite drumming on any Beatles song. And it's a shame that that's not on here. So that's the only thing I'm going to say. Where the fuck is Rain? All right. Norwegian Wood. The left sitar, I love that because that's something they kept it, as I recall. They didn't try to center the sitar, which is, I think, brilliant, because I think it would have been a mistake having everything dead center. There are obviously stereo, you hear the great stereo in these still, but again, I kind of miss the stereo left and right, especially in the 65, 66, 67 folky, psychedelic electric period. The whole idea for stereo is whirling them out around my head, moody, room things. I love that kind of treatment. I was always a fan of Sgt. Pepper stereo. I know mono's the way they intended, and it's tighter, and it is a tighter rock and roll record as mono. But go play a mono record if you want to hear that. And what's great about it, if you have a good setup, and I don't mean necessarily expensive, but if you have your turntable and your speakers set kind of right and everything, a good mono record will give you the spatial sound that gives you the illusion that it's not stereo, but there's depth and dimension and air, and it can be really wonderful if you have it set right. I am not one who has a separate mono cartridge or setup like that, and it would probably sound even better if I did, but good mono can sound amazing. And if people say they don't like mono, I think they're, I'm not saying they're disingenuous, but they just haven't heard good mono. And of course, on the surface, I always say I like stereo better, but it really depends. And I love that the sitar is still kind of left, an acoustic guitar. Good stereo, good tambourine there. Okay, Nowhere Man. I'm still giving the Nowhere Man, where is that here? The Nowhere Man shout out to this. My opinion still is every song on here, the psychedelic stuff from Hey Bulldog to Eleanor Rigby to Altogether, well, not Altogether now, hasn't been remixed here, but Baby You're a Rich Man, All You Need Is Love, Nowhere Man included on here. I like these remixes better than the Giles Martin. Preference, taste. I remember when I first got this on a CD to begin with, I was gobsmacked. It was very different. It's how I wanted the Beatles stereo to sound back then. You can find a copy of this, pick it up. Now, some people don't like it. Some people think it's congested. I don't think it's congested at all. But it's, again, this is all subjective. But on the version here, I think it's a little bit intense. I think the bass is a little hotter than it needs to be. There are nice background vocals. The weird thing about this, which is strange, there's a hi-hat. And the hi-hat of Ringo's hi-hat seems to be offbeat. How can that be? You listen to it and you tell me that hi-hat, or maybe it's just brought up more and I didn't notice it before, but it just seems off for some reason. It seems out of whack, out of kilter. But it's high octane. I would say it's a little pushed, almost, I don't want to say compressed because everyone hates hearing that, but there's something off on that. Michelle, of course, neutral vocals. I could go on and on. Okay, one of my favorite Lennon songs has always been Girl on Rubber Soul. So we have Girl, we have, well, let me just say this. If I Needed Someone, is that there? No. Let me say this about the most exciting thing in terms of the remixes for me are the tracks from Rubber Soul. It gives me a positive feeling that the Rubber Soul remix, when that does come out, hopefully next year, is going to be really good. This whole idea of using this MAL software, Peter Jackson software, to isolate tracks, it could be used for good or evil, right? And I think for the most part, it really is good on here. So Again, I could go through all these songs. When I Needed Someone, the guitars, or that kind of twangy, jingle jangle guitars are beautiful. Paperback Writer, I wrote again, the bass is killer on this. And I wrote Where's Rain again. Where is rain? Where is rain? It's Eleanor Rigby. Eleanor Rigby works better. Oh, I actually like the left-right vocals on the record. I think it's more centered here. But again, the strings are separated. I think the 1966 stereo kills it. I like the original stereo of these Revolver tracks on the UK original stereo better than the remixes. Yellow Submarine, fun, very crisp. The fun effects, some are a little hotter maybe, or a little higher. On and on and on. Okay. The rock and roll song, I think one I was disappointed with was Twist and Shout. That's a great song. I like that they did the covers, Twist and Shout, You Really Got a Hold on Me, and Lover Beethoven. But I tell you, if you want to hear the best versions of those first songs, the one to get, better than this remix, better than the original UK, in stereo, if you want the stereo version, is the Horzu, the German Horzu, called Die Beatles, D-I-E Beatles. That is the best sounding. It kicks ass over this remix. It kicks ass over the original UK stereo version. All right, so there we go. Good. I'm Only Sleeping is one of my favorites on here. The backwards guitar is great. That's where we heard different things from the Yesterday and Today mix to the American, to the UK when it turned up on Revolver. I just kind of love that. Taxman, Tomorrow Never Knows. Okay. The Tomorrow Never Knows. It's good. I still prefer the original UK better. The backwardsness. I'm going to go on and on here. I have notes again. The vinyl's more dynamic than the compact disc. Talk about the Horzu, Penny Lane. Not as good as the Horzu, those tracks. Both in Measure Mystery Tour. Let's go to the blue. I think we'll go into the blue now. I'm going to try to trim this so I don't have to go way long. Of course, some of you freaks, this would have been 2 hours, and you freaks and geeks and Beatle geeks would have loved me to go through every single song on this list, but I ain't going to do it. I like the red better than the blue. And of course, the blue, we've heard pretty much almost every single one. The weirdest thing at all. Okay, let's talk about the weirdness on this. And it's an artistic decision that Giles apparently made. And obviously, the remaining Beatles and the States went along with it. And apparently, Yoko and Sean went along with it. But the weirdest difference on all 6 of these records is I Am the Walrus. I love I Am the Walrus. I love it so much. But again, I love the Horzu version of it, the true stereo version of it. What Giles Martin did, and this was intentional, obviously, he changed up and added sound effects to the whole last couple minutes, the whole fade out and the whole radio broadcasts and sound effects and voices. He put all new shit. I don't know what he did is he opened up his sock drawer and pulled out some BBC tapes his father had left to him and stuck these on I'm the Walrus. Now, it's jarring. It's really weird that he would do that. What's going on there? I Am the Walrus. Now, it's not bad. It's just so different. It's really taken artistic license. Now, obviously, McCartney and Ringo and the Estates heard it. I don't get it. I don't understand it. It's like, that would have fit more in the Love mix, the Cirque du Soleil record that he did for the Beatles. That is the weirdest thing. Also, the Juba Juba, the Goo Goo Jews are brought up more. There's some more vocals you hear, background things that I wasn't used to. That's fun to hear. But I don't see it as a replacement. Hello, goodbye. Lady Madonna, what's nice about it, the piano starts in the left channel again. They didn't try to center that. I love that. I love the piano at the beginning. You know, Hey Jude, some people are tired of that because Paul McCartney has done it for years, but I think that is an amazing Beatle recording, and I always loved Paul McCartney's voice, the sound, the timbre of his voice when it comes in. And I believe that was the first single the Beatles ever released in stereo. That was the first Apple single, the double A side, Hey Jude and Revolution. And it really works. It's a nice balance here, and it's an epic song. And, you know, it's slightly different. I don't hear any major differences. Of course, I've heard that from one of the box sets, previous box sets. Revolution, I was a little more disappointed with, and I didn't go back and listen to the anniversary box set either of that, but it sounds like the highs are cut off a little bit, which disappointed me because there's such a rockin' song. It's warmer than I think it should be, but again, this could be system dependent. I actually have sometimes in my room and my system, a little bit of a hotter system, so I was surprised there. USSR, again, warm, but it works. The bass kicks ass. It cuts at the end. You know, I could go into everything else. Oh, blah, 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 don't let me down. Okay, Ballad of John and Yoko. I think the bass is way too prominent. Now, I love that bass. It's kind of this tango-y bass thing, and it works great on the single and even on the album. I think it's a little too hot, but it's a great bass. I think it's too much. There is a maraca in the left channel that I don't even remember. I don't recall hearing that before. That's where it's just kind of fun hearing something different. Old Brown Shoe, I thought the vocal was dull. I thought that was I think that was not successful at all. All right, Abbey Road stuff. Abbey Road doesn't need a remix. It never needed a remix. It's one of the best, you know, it's basically the best sounding Beatle record. I don't understand why they remixed it. And the album, I don't like the remixed album of that. I think it's inconsistent. I think there's some great stuff on it, interesting choices, but it doesn't flow like the original UK album flows. So I would basically, you know, definitely get a UK Abbey Road if you don't have one, an early pressing of that. But if you don't notice and you don't have any of these Beatles records, I would say this is fine. But when you know that stuff so well, it's jarring. Again, Let It Be, something. Good strong bass on Come Together. Long and Winding Road. I actually like Spector's orchestration. That's the lush version of that. And I think it works. I actually like that. Now and then, of course, they put that at the beginning of side 6, the beginning of the beginning of side 5. So the first song on the final third LP. And it just sounds so different than everything else. It's a different sound, of course. It sounds out of place. I understand why they put it there. I understand why they didn't just tag it on the end. Maybe that would have been a better place for it, except when I get to the end here pretty quickly, I'm gonna try to wind this down. I think at the end, the song they picked really works. And some people think, said they shouldn't put that. Well, we'll get there in a minute. Wall of Sound, Now and Then. It's just too thick compared to everything else. And especially after that, you go right into the sparseness of Blackbird. And that's a jarring transition. It doesn't work for me personally. This is another thing I like. I love this about A Day in the Life and Dear Prudence. You have a real intro. You have you don't have the dissolve. Like Dear Prudence on the White Album, there's a dissolve from back in the USSR, and every version that it's been on, you always hear that intro. You don't have a clean intro. Now we have a clean intro on that. Now, Day in the Life, you have that great clean acoustic guitar strum intro. As I recall, the only place that I remember that being on prior to this, I can't remember. I think the Blue Album, when it came out, didn't have a clean intro, but the Imagine soundtrack, the John Lennon documentary soundtrack, had A Day in the Life and had a wonderful, clean intro. To me, That's the kind of stuff I love. It is very clean. And I think the problem, though, with it, although it has a clean intro, I think Lennon's vocals are not as mysterious as they are on the original. There's something that's the whole sound of it, it's way too clean. Dear Prudence is way too clean. And, there's a mysterious sound to that, a kind of a creepiness and a beauty to Dear Prudence that I really love on the White Album, and it's lost here. It's cleaned up way too much for my taste. It's not as mystical as it was on that. Within You, Without You, I always love that song. I know a lot of people when they were younger didn't like that song. They didn't get it maybe. I would argue that there's two classic, amazing pieces of music, epics, two of the very best Beatle records, recorded pieces of music, Day in the Life and Within You, Without You, even though it's George and a classical Indian musicians. That got me literally into classical Indian music, Ravi Shankar, another classical artist. After that, Ali Akbar Khan with Ravi Shankar and so many others over the years. That really opened a world up to me. I wouldn't say this is the best version. Still, the original UK beats it, but I think it is more successful to a point. Hey Bulldog, okay. Hey Bulldog is not as good on here than, the Yellow Submarine song track. This kicks ass by far over this version of it. Even the Horzu version, that's a version that you, again, need to get if you don't have the Horzu Magic Mystery Tour. And then the record side 6, last track is I Want You, She's So Heavy. A long song. Some people think they could have put 2 other songs on it, but I think that's the perfect ending. I just love that build up. I don't know if this is the best version. I still like the original UK version of I Want You, She's So Heavy, but there's a warmness to this version. I think the remix is very successful. And it builds up, and I think I'm hearing more, and maybe I'm wrong here, but I think I hear more Hammond organ of Billy Preston. I wish even the Hammond organ was brought up even more, but I love that build up and the swirling sounds of the almost like wind as it builds and builds up. I want to say, I think these are successful. I have caveats because I have everything little asterisks, but I think they did a good job. Again, it's a great listen. I listened once all through, as I said, just everything, eyes shut, eyes wide shut, and then a version where I took, stenographer notes for days and days. Oh, days. So I thank you for watching. And again, I love that they did this. I think it's a good way for you to get into the Beatles if you're not into the Beatles. I know most of you probably are and probably have everything already. But this is a good entry point. But again, distinguish the covers. Let us know. Let people know. I know what to look for. Let people know that these are the remix version. I think that was a big mistake. And I thank you all for watching. And I love that they just ended up with I Want You, She's So Heavy. Because that's the way you really want the